as an Uber driver and as a Lyft driver, should you ever accept cash for a trip? Should you ever do trips off the app? My short answer is no. But this has become, with the way Uber and Lyft is treating its drivers, this has become a lot more common. These dark rides or ghost rides are becoming a lot more common. And you gotta be very careful. You can see right here, some Uber and Lyft drivers are asking riders to avoid the apps and pay in cash. So going on here, that the main thing, being honest, is that drivers say they're trying to make up for the low-paying gigs through the rideshare apps. I gotta be honest, don't do this. I'm just gonna say it. I know some people have done it. I know some people have made more money and things have been fine, but you are rolling the dice a lot. Because going down here, you can see they're ditching the price, agreeing on a price with the passenger, and paying them in cash or through an app like Venmo. Drivers for the services told Business Insider that going around the apps has become more attractive as many notice their earnings decreasing. Like I've talked about in a lot of videos, I call it the quad threat now. 1, you're getting paid less as a driver. 2, Uber and Lyft, on top of that, is taking out a bigger cut. Back in the day, it was 80-20. I took away 80%. Uber and Lyft kept 20%. So if I made $100, I get 80, they get 20. Now they take up to half, even more. 3, costs are more expensive. Maintenance on your car is more expensive. Like things like gas does fluctuate. I think right now, at the time of this video, it isn't too bad, but that's always a factor, right? Things are just more expensive in general. And then lastly, 4, there's way more drivers on the road than ever before, which decreases your earnings because there's not as many rides to go around, right? So in the past, some have said trips pay as low as $3. Striking a deal directly with the passenger offers a more lucrative fare, even if it carries risks for both sides. So even not just for the driver, but also the passenger, and this has happened to me, I'll be honest. There's been a couple times where I go to get an Uber, and the guy's like, hey, how much are you paying for this ride? And I'm like, I don't know, $20. And he's like, well, I'm getting paid $7 for this ride. What if you cancel the ride, or I cancel the ride, and you Venmo me $10, call it even? No, it's not worth it on either end, right? And you can see here that on Reddit and Facebook groups, some drivers and even passengers talk about whether it's even acceptable to ask riders to cancel the ride as they request it through the Uber or Lyft app and pay them a different way. It is risky, right? So there's one TikTok post from last year showing an Uber driver asking the rider who was filming the interaction to pay $70 in cash for the ride when the Uber is charging her $80. And I hate to say it, like, okay, yeah, is that cheaper? Yes, but to save $10 for that unbelievably high risk, God forbid if something happens or whatever, not worth it, right? The video appears to show the driver saying that Uber wasn't paying him enough for the ride, and then he was just being nice by offering her a discount on the ride. And okay, maybe, but being honest, I hate to say it, I'm very honest and transparent in all my videos. It was, I don't say selfish, because I think it's like that quote, like the road to hell is paved with good intentions. Like maybe in their mind, they're like, hey, well, she saves money, I make more money, it's a win-win for both of us. But let's be honest, you were just doing it to make more money, right? Michael, who drives for Uber in Boston, nice, Boston represent, said he often hears drivers discussing whether to offer customers the option to not use the apps and pay using cash or sublet payment like Venmo. And here's the big thing. This is the big reason why I think even among the quick things that pop into your head, like safety reasons, I think safety is the first thing that pops into my head. If, let's say, someone pukes in your car, you can't go to Uber and Lyft and say, hey, someone puked in my car, you got to charge them. Nope, you're on your own. But besides that, the option could backfire because Uber and Lyft could deactivate the driver's accounts. Some drivers have considered accepting payment outside the app, but it's risky because we could lose our account if a passenger reports us, so most drivers try to avoid this. And I got to say, like, that is a potential thing. Like, I have heard of, like, say, someone going to an Uber or Lyft, they say, hey, cancel the ride, pay me in Venmo or cash, we'll call it even. And then, the passenger says, wait a minute, you're asking me to cancel the ride, or you cancel the ride, and they report them to Uber and Lyft, your account could be not only just deactivated, but you could be potentially permanently banned. And that's pretty bad if you're relying on this income, right? Canceling a ride could also cost riders, and that's another tricky thing. It's kind of like who actually cancels the ride, because Uber does charge a fee for passengers who cancel their request for a ride later than a few minutes after they make it, and Lyft charges the riders a fee for canceling more than 30 seconds after the driver accepts your ride. And as you can imagine, we urge riders and drivers alike to only take trips that are requested through the Uber app for their safety. And especially too, if you look at this, I've mentioned this before in other videos as a safety thing, Uber can record the audio of their trip, hit the emergency button, or share trips with their friends. So there's a lot of safety features with both Uber and Lyft. And if you just do this dark ride or ghost ride or ride kind of off the grid on both ends, for both the driver and passenger, you don't have this protection. Off-app trips are prohibited by many regulations and our policies, and drivers who violate this policy risk losing access to the Uber platform. Even though Lyft didn't comment on this, I will still say that Lyft is definitely in the same boat, that if you get caught doing this, you could be deactivated and potentially permanently banned. Overall, it's just not worth it. And here's the thing, I definitely get it because, you know, like I said, with that quad threat, there's never been a time where rideshare drivers make the least amount of money than now. It's unfortunate. Although I will say, things have gotten better, right? I've done videos about what's going on in Massachusetts with getting a minimum wage. That happened here in California. Other states are starting to do that now. I know like Minneapolis was a place that was looking at that. In addition, you know, Massachusetts just became the first state to have now Uber and Lyft unions, and they got the green light for that. So I do think things are getting better for drivers. I do think that's the case. I think that things are moving a bit slower than I like, gotta be honest, but things are definitely getting better for drivers. There's no way to deny that. And I think that's pretty awesome. I'm gonna be honest, I think it's awesome that at least things are slowly getting better. And I do see the appeal to this. I do see the appeal that as a driver, you're like, all right, it's a win-win, kind of. And you're not wrong necessarily in the sense that you're like, okay, I'm getting paid more, they're paying less, it's a win-win. And well, yes, from a pure financial on paper perspective, that might make some sense. It's just not worth it. You know, I mean, the fact of the risk of safety, you don't have access to all these safety features that Uber and Lyft does have. You know, God forbid something happens with the passenger, right? Again, they puke in your car, like it's a Friday night, they puke in your car. You're not going to get that puking fee or whatever. You know, it's like $250 or whatever it is. Nope, you're just stuck with it. And then, of course, in addition, the risk of now not being able to drive, not being able to drive for Uber and Lyft, being permanently banned from the apps, it's really not worth it. And, you know, I talked about this actually. It was kind of funny, a little fun fact. It's somewhere on this channel somewhere. I actually was featured in an Austin, Texas news station, and they were asking me tips about rideshare safety. And this is actually one of them that I said. If someone pulls up and says, hey, pay me cash or whatever, don't do it. Again, I think they're called like dark rides or ghost rides. Like I've heard these names kind of thrown around that they're kind of like non-existent. They're off the grid, just on both ends, right? As a driver, don't do this. Don't ask for it. It's not worth it. Especially because there are a lot of passengers who probably would report you. So keep that in mind. And on the other end, right? As a passenger, like say if you're watching this video, being like, hey, well, maybe I could strike a deal with the driver. Or maybe if they do ask me, I'm willing to accept it. Don't do it at all. Like that one example, I mean, to me, the difference between spending $80 on a ride and 70, that extra 10, is almost negligible. Now, if they said, okay, you can either spend $80 through Uber or $40 in cash, then it'd be like, okay, that's a bit more enticing, right? But even still, it's not worth the risk. The risk is so much higher than the reward. And I know a lot of drivers are doing this for just financial reasons. That's the main thing, right? They want to make more money. But here's the big kicker. At the end of the day, the risk of you getting deactivated and potentially permanently banned is way higher than you think when it comes to this. Uber and Lyft does have a very zero tolerance policy. And you could argue, oh, Uber and Lyft just wants the money, and that's true. But it is also really, really risky. It is a huge risk to do this on both ends. And although you might be doing this initially to make more money, in the long run, the potential risk could actually equal you making significantly less money or even no money at all because you got banned from the apps and now you can't drive whatsoever.